I have not deliberately not thought about this today because it's too big a moment for me if I had to think. So I'm not going to think about 500. I'm going to tell you the story of how it started. So that's the graph. And as Abe said, PFP is a movement, and he reminds us every time he's on a stage or talks about PFP. Now, many of you will have seen the TED talk where it says, how do you start a movement? And there's a picture of the lone nut, and he starts to dance. If you've not seen it, I really encourage you to watch it. But the lone nut starts to dance, and he looks completely ridiculous at the front of the thing, and everybody laughs at him. And then a few courageous people come and join him, and they call them the first followers. And then when there's enough first followers, the crowd follows. So tonight we are celebrating the first followers. And I admit that I was the lone nut. And there were many people who thought, I've really lost my marbles. And there are a few people in this room who gave me the courage to keep going. Oh my goodness, I'm useless. It started with a journey. The movement started with a journey. In 2004, we brought our two beautiful daughters back to South Africa from living in the UK. And everywhere I went, people attacked me for that decision. What a stupid thing to do. This country is going down the tubes. The education system is broken. Your children will be raped. I mean, you have no idea. And so I was not in a good place. And then I attended a session by Professor O'Connell in 2009, and he talked about South Africa at risk. And it was a massive wake-up call. And if you haven't seen Professor O'Connell's slides, that really helps us to see the size of the issue. I would recommend that you do. But that day in August 2009, in a very small little room in a library in Cape Town, was my Damascus moment. And I could not do anything about this because I knew that day that this was coming. And I also knew that, and I didn't think it was going to happen so quickly. I thought it's going to happen in a decade or a little longer. And I knew that I would have to answer my children when they say, Mum, what did you do? And I had no idea. I wanted to be able to say something. And tonight is not just about celebrating. It's also a call to action, because each and every one of us need to think, what are we going to say to our children and our grandchildren? Liu says the reason why the world's in the state it is right now is because adults colouring in books was found, was kind of came to market, and now everybody's colouring in rather than fixing the country. I think that's just fun. But the reality is, what are you going to say? What were you doing when our country was about to burn? And if we don't fix our education crisis, it will burn. And the crisis is enormous. 60% of our grade 3s in our country cannot read at grade level. Adam will talk later about what the implication of that is. So I was confronted with this massive issue. 20,000 out of 25,000 schools are failing. 20,000 out of 25,000 government schools are not giving our children the skills they need to live an economically sustainable life. 80% of our children will never be able to apply for all these funds that they're now putting up for Fees Must Fall because they can't read for meaning. And so my question is, where do we start? And I'm sure there's lots of people in the room who had the same question at some point, because I'm not an educator. I'm a business person. My background is organizational development and leadership. And my question was, what can we as business leaders offer? I just want to quickly fast forward to February 2017. I've just been asked to speak at the Harvard Business Conference about business as a force for good in the world, because they're starting to say nowhere else in the world has anything like this happen, like what you are celebrating with us tonight. So thank you for that. So when I had this idea, at that time I was being paid as a consultant to come and work with clients. Adam and I, when we were at Anderson Consulting together in 1992, it's a very long time ago, and we learned this, how to do change leadership and change management, and so that was what I was doing. I was wondering whether that might be useful in schools. That was my question. Could it, I'm supposedly CEOs think it's useful to work with me. Would a school principal find me useful to work with? That was my question. And so luckily I spent some time with school principals and asked them that question, and we have Elizabeth in the room, she's our taskmaster, so we have to ask her permission every now and again. And in this case, I am so glad I asked permission. Because the principal said the following, they said, we love your idea. But before you even enter the schools, we want to tell you that principals do not want to be fixed. We are not broken. Yes, we need help, and yes, we haven't had the skills, and yes, but don't come with this fixing nonsense. It's demeaning, it's actually just arrogant. And so they put me right in my place. Secondly, and I'm not the most popular person in some cases, but this is what they said. I didn't say it. They said, don't adopt us. You adopt puppies and babies, you do not adopt principals and schools. But partner with us. We're excited about this idea of partnership. Thirdly, don't dump your old stuff on us and then we have to feel all grateful. Don't bring your old stationery and your books, because if you don't want to take those books to King Edward's, why are you thinking it's okay for those books to come to my school? Because when they arrive at my school, they have peanut butter and jam between the pages. And so don't do that. But lastly, the thing that made the biggest difference is they said, we are delighted about the idea that we're going to work with business leaders, and we know we're going to learn something from them. But we want the business leaders to consider the possibility that they will learn from us as much as we will learn from them. And that was the moment of truth on this project. And you're going to hear tonight from Zama and from Graham. We deliberately only have two people speaking from our community, our two business partners. But both Graham and Zama will say to you, I have learned more from Michael in Zama's case and Elizabeth in Graham's case than Elizabeth has learned from Graham. And I'm hoping Graham's going to tell some of the, how Elizabeth put him in his place, which Elizabeth has been good fun to watch from the side. So when Mandy wrote the book, she said, this is the story about people saying yes. And when I was reflecting on this evening, I was reflecting on how many of those early, those initial early followers said yes, and they had no idea what they said yes to. So the first two people who had no idea what we said yes to was Rhyn and I. And we met each other, and this photograph was taken. I was still slim and beautiful then, long time ago. But we had no idea that we would stand here in 2017 and celebrate 500. And if we knew, I don't know whether we would have done it, because it's kind of a very scary thought for me. But what happened is, at the time, I was so excited about the idea that I looked around me and I said to everybody, let's all do this. Let's all go and partner with the principal. Come on, we can do this. And very sadly, a few months later, we came together, and the only partnership that was going full blast was Rhyn and I. And we had, the others just didn't. And I'm going to steal a few minutes of those other minutes, Jancy, so you're going to have to forgive me on this one. But so the reality is it didn't work. And we realized we needed to put a structure in place. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the structure and just acknowledge a few people on the journey, and then I'm going to hand over to Zama and Michael. So firstly, Veronica Vantenaar was our first learning process facilitator. Aine Brown, Mike, and I put this in for you. She was the very first client who said yes when we came up with this harebrained idea. And Fadil Nordin was the very first paid-for partner, and very sadly died a few years later. So it's very sad that he's not with us to celebrate our 500 partnership. That was the first circle. We launched in February 2011. We are celebrating our 600th partnership on the 24th of February in Cape Town at the same school where it all started. So we launched circles around the country. Tonight we have Ray Sher here. He was the first learning process facilitator here in Joburg. In our second learning process, second circle in Joburg, we have Jen Taylor and Ashney, who are both due to be here tonight. I don't know whether they managed to come. And then in May 2012, we launched Joburg 3, and I'm specifically mentioning Joburg 3 because there was something magical about that circle. Lindelani Singo, his group was going to come and dance for us, but maybe they'll do that in the end. Thomas Holt from Multitech, as a result of his involvement, has now got a whole bunch of other people in Multitech involved. Nina Wellstead this is where it all started, when Nina told her story about her partner's possibility journey one day. And we had an amazing learning process facilitator, and Stephanie Dawson-Cossa. There's no doubt that the quality of the experience has to do with the quality of the learning process facilitator, and with Stephanie, we're delighted that you were here with us tonight. So we continued and we launched in Hermanus, in Bloemfontein, Durban. Francois Everard is another learning process facilitator, one of those early followers. And then in May 2013, Rosie showed up. And it was a magical moment in our journey, and probably the saddest moment when she decided she wants to now become a coach and she's no longer part of our team. But Rosie then later on became a partner to Johanna Ramodiki. And in June, Dina, who many of you will know, showed up. I'm going to hand over to Michael and Zama. But before I do this, because this is my very last chance that I'm up on the stage here, is I want to just acknowledge a few of the advisors who are in the room who have kept me going. And the first one, and I know he doesn't want to be acknowledged, is Professor Benedal, because 6 years ago, I don't know where he is. I had the idea of going to talk, this idea. And I'll never forget, I met Nick at the Hyatt, and we had this amazing conversation, and he said, go for it. This is what the world needs more of. And then every year when I've completely run out of steam, I've said, Nick, can I come visit you again? And then I go visit him, and he says, you have to go for it. And then I go and do it again. So Nick, a lot of why we're here is Nick Benedal's fault. Guy Harris, same thing, very supportive in many amazing. Linda Smith has hurt me. I've cried on Linda's shoulder more than any other place, so super Linda. Bernard, I just wish I could get to you a bit easier, but Bernard is now the president of the RHE, and watch me, now I'm going to be on his case. Francois Hugo, my uncle, who's here tonight, I'm very delighted. Thank you, Francois, for coming. Jeff Rothschild has played an enormously important role. Tim, unfortunately, just this evening couldn't let me send me a note to say can't come. And then Adam Craker's come on board and just, in a most miraculous way, helped us to put wind in our sails. So can I just quickly get a hand of applause for this amazing group of people?